Our candidates will have a 2-minute opening statement. The candidates have tossed a coin to determine the order of their statements, and their 2-minute closing statements will be in reversed order. Now, after questions from our panel, we will take written questions from the audience, and our pages have paper and pencils, and we'll be happy to pick up your questions when you are ready. And pages, if you are here right now, please raise your hand so we know who you are. Okay, can you raise them again so everyone can see? Okay, thank you. Now, when writing your questions, please remember it is necessary to address them to both candidates, and please keep them brief and to the point. No questions will be permitted that are slanderous or a personal attack. League sorters may rewrite questions for purposes of clarity. Now, candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question from the panel. And candidates, please watch your timer seated right there in the front, holding that handy-dandy little sign. Please turn off your cell phones and pagers. No cameras other than from the media may be used. And we ask that you refrain from applauding or otherwise demonstrating support or non-support for a candidate. Time will be kept by league members, and countdown cards will be visible to all of us up here. When allotted response time has expired, candidates will be allowed a brief time to finish a sentence before the moderator interrupts. Now, a follow-up question from a panel member may be asked if the panel member needs a point of clarification or a question he or she posed. 30 seconds will be allowed for candidate response. Now, I may interrupt a candidate if I believe you are straying from the subject. The candidates are not allowed to interrupt each other. No flash cameras or motor-driven cameras will be used during the forum, nor will any audience recording of the forum be permitted. No displays of a partisan nature will be permitted within the meeting room, and that includes, but is not limited to, T-shirts, buttons, sweatshirts, caps, or other items of clothing, banners, posted placards, or signs, and the decision of a league representative will be final. No campaign literature may be distributed within this room. A table will be available in the rear of the meeting room for campaign literature, and the audience will be asked to refrain from applauding, as I mentioned, or otherwise demonstrating support or non-support, and the candidates agree that they, their organizations, and their supporters will not use the forum portions of the forum or any audio clips, video clips, or transcripts thereof for political advertising or other purposes. The campaigns may each film the forum as long as recordings are not used for these purposes. At this time, I am honored to introduce the candidates for State Senator John Sullivan, the Democratic incumbent, and Randy Freese, Republican challenger. Our panelists tonight include Iris Nelson, who is the past president of the League of Women Voters of Adams County and reference librarian for the Quincy Public Library. Thank you, Iris. And Matt Schmidt from WGEM TV, and Doug Wilson, a senior writer and political reporter for the Quincy Herald-Whig. We will begin the forum by asking our candidates for their opening statements, and the coin toss determines that the Democratic candidate begins and the Republican candidate will proceed. Now it's time for our panelists to ask their questions, and we'll begin with Ms. Iris Nelson. Yes. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is really an honor to be here this evening. I'm just really pleased to be have a lot of friends and family here this evening, including my wife Joan, my son Matt, my daughter Emily, and my mom Rita, and a host of other family members as well. When I first ran for this office, I only made 3 promises. I promised, first of all, that I would work hard. Secondly, that I would educate myself on the issues. And thirdly, that I would make decisions based on what I thought was right and best for the people that I represent in this district. And I believe my record reflects that. We've done a lot of good things for Western Illinois. Whether it's building infrastructure, for example, roads 336 has been completed from here to Macomb. Whether it's educational opportunities. Right now, we have to remember that this is a huge district, 13 counties, and there's a new school being built over in Cass County in Virginia, Illinois. Also, job training opportunities for our community colleges, welding programs, truck driving programs, nursing programs. We've also been able to, obviously I'm the only farmer in the Illinois State Senate, and certainly I relish the role of being a spokesperson for agriculture, our #1 industry in the state. We've also expanded business opportunities and allowed businesses to grow. For example, working with the city of Quincy and the county, ADM wanted to build a margarine plant just south of Quincy here. The Radio Road intersection needed upgrade. We worked with them to make those improvements. There's 217,000 people that live in this Senate district, and I believe it's my duty and my responsibility to represent each and every one of them, and that is what I've tried to do. You know, when somebody comes into my office here in Quincy, and I'd like to introduce my legislative office director, Joan Hester, who's done an outstanding job, but when somebody comes into my office, or if I see somebody at a pancake breakfast somewhere and they have a problem, I don't ask them if they're a Democrat or a Republican. I ask them what I can do to help solve that problem, and that's what I will continue to do. We have a lot of complex issues that we're working on in Springfield. They're going to require complex solutions working together in a bipartisan way. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. I'm Randy Freeze, candidate for Illinois State Senate in the 47th District. I often say to people that I got a wonderful start in life. I was blessed. I was born and raised on a farm in rural Adams County between Paloma and Fowler. That was a small grain and livestock farm. I was born the youngest of 9 children. Went to school there at Camp Point Central and graduated, and then went to Western Illinois University in Macomb. Got a degree in agribusiness. From there, I worked for a short time for White Farm Equipment. And in 1983, my wife and I were married and moved back into Adams County. In 1985, we started a small business, a small retail business. And started here in Quincy, Illinois, in a small grocery store, and grew it to 5 different retail locations and numerous different satellite locations, and employed at one time 35 to 40 people. Then I was privileged to be elected to serve as the Adams County Circuit Court Clerk. And so I've seen what's molded me in my life are these very issues. My upbringing on the farm in agriculture, in education, and small business, and small government. These are the things that have molded my life, and these are the things that I want to take with me to serve the people of the 47th District. We need a lot of help here in the state of Illinois. We lag behind our states that neighbor us in our unemployment rate. We chase business and businesses across the state line by the increased taxation that we've seen and increased regulations on business. We need to create a friendlier business environment in this state, so that when our kids graduate from high school and college, they have a business to be employed by and stay here. I've often said I love going to North Carolina and Texas. I just don't necessarily want to have to go there to visit my children and my grandchildren. I want them to have the opportunities that were afforded to my wife and I here in Adams County and in this 47th District. I want them to have that same opportunity, and I see that opportunity being squandered by the leadership in Springfield.
Thank you, candidates. And now it is time for our panelists to ask their questions, and we'll begin with Ms. Iris Nelson.
Good evening. Stable funding sources for education in Illinois have been a long-standing problem. Short-term remedies have provided short-term funding solutions with large inequities from one district to another. What solutions would you support to stabilize funds for education that would work for the long term in all districts?
You are first.
Well, thank you very much for the question. You know, the state of Illinois has to learn to live, and has to learn to live within the revenue that they have in front of us, and the spending, so that we only spend the amount that we have, and we have to make priorities in Springfield as to how that money is going to be allocated. And certainly one of the priorities that I've had is education funding. It's always been a priority. Now, we've gone through some very difficult times at the state level, and we've had to make some modest cuts to education. But as we look at some of the revenue sources that are out there to enhance revenue coming into the state of Illinois, I've supported an expansion of gaming. We bring in $500 million annually to the state of Illinois. That's money that certainly that education could use, and that would be a funding source that would help stabilize funding to education.
Is this a rebuttal or is this a 1 minute? Tell me how this works.
This is a minute response.
Well, certainly, we've been grossly underfunding education simply because as we finish up the end of our fiscal year in the state of Illinois, we finish up with an $8.5 to $9 billion backlog of debt. A big chunk of that is supposed to go to education, but instead, we can't afford to pay it. That's why people around the United States call Illinois a deadbeat state. We need to pay our bills, I agree, but in the past 10 years, we have not been able to, and we continue to accrue debt. We cannot stay by a budget. We need to cut excessive spending, we need to seek out waste and fraud in the state, and we need to balance our budget so that we can pay it on time so that schools are funded in the proper fashion. I am not for the expansion of gaming to take care of educational expenditures. I don't think that's the magic wand that's needed for this state. I don't think it's a long-term solution. If you think it is, then why wasn't lottery, when it was explained to us several years back to be the end-all for education, why wasn't all those problems solved because of the lottery? So I'm not for increased in gaming either.
Okay, I want to pick up with the situation about the debt there. Illinois has the fourth highest debt in the nation. Last check, $9 billion backlog in unpaid bills. In recent years, the legislature has turned to borrowing and trying to pay bills that way. Give us each your stance on, is borrowing effective? Does it have a place in trying to deal with the debt in Illinois?
Borrowing only has a place if you have a plan to pay the borrowing back off. In the 10 years of my opponent's service, I don't believe there's been a borrowing proposition that he has not supported. It's put us into a situation where over the 10 years we've quadrupled our bonded indebtedness. It's not something it's not a road we can continue to go down. We continue to kick the can down the road to the next generation, and the next generation should not be standing for it, and I do not stand for it. We are in had a budget problem 10 years ago. We have a budget and deficit crisis now. It is upon us, and we need to do something about it. And one of the ways out of this is to enhance the small business environment in the state of Illinois. Small business hires 7 out of 10 people in the United States. If we create an environment for small business to grow and flourish, we'll get the revenues needed to get us back out of this hole.
I think, first of all, let's be very clear as to how the state got into the situation with the debt that it has right now. And that is generations, decades and decades of underfunding, for the most part, our pensions. It has happened under Democrat and Republican administrations for the last 40 years. And so the debt situation that we are in right now has happened by both parties. Is there a time and a place for borrowing and for debt? Absolutely. My opponent mentioned just a few minutes ago about the backlog of unpaid bills that the state is facing right now. I have a plan that would restructure that debt, just like you would restructure your home mortgage, and set that debt and go out and sell bonds, and then take the money and pay this backlog of unpaid bills, the money that we owe to doctors and hospitals and nursing homes. Pay our bills and then structure that debt over a series of 2 or 3 or 4 years, and have a plan to take care of that debt. This year in the budget that we passed, we first of all came together in a bipartisan way, determined a revenue number, and then set aside $1 billion right off the top to address that debt and that backlog of unpaid bills.
Gentlemen, the shortfall for pension, $83 billion, the largest in the nation. It's a big, complex issue. What one thing, in the short amount of time you can share with us, what one thing do you want to see done to make a dent in that?
Well, first of all, it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's decades in the making. Regardless of what one party or another or my opponent says about this, that the problem, it's been created by both Democrats and Republicans over the years. My plan is very simple, Doug. I have five things that I think need to be in our solution to the underfunded pension liability. First of all, we have to make reforms. They have to be bipartisan because both parties have caused this problem. They have to be comprehensive, all 5 systems. They can't cost shift that debt over to the school districts and the community college districts. All 5 systems have to be reformed so that we come up with a comprehensive plan for all 5 of those systems.
Certainly, I agree. We have a tremendous pension problem. It's something that comes up wherever I travel in this 11-county district. People, whether you're on the side of the pensioner to receive the pension or whether you're on the side of the taxpayer who needs to be funding the pension system, it's the only variable left in the equation, people are concerned. And certainly it's been a bipartisan effort to get us here. But for the past 10 years, there's been one party in charge. There's been one party in the head of the House, the head of the Senate, and in the governor's mansion. And in those 10 years, we have seen no solutions. We have seen a worsening problem to the point now where we've reached $83 billion. I think it's more than that. $83 billion underfunded is based on a return investment of 8.5%. When the government accounting standards catch up with us and we realize we can't return 8.5%, that we can only return about 3.5 to 3.7, that number escalates from 83 billion to over 140 billion. That is a catastrophic number that is almost impossible for us to take care of. We need real reform in the state pension program.
My question has to do with taxes. Out of the 50 states in this country, just 6 have a state income flat tax rate. Of those 6, only Massachusetts is higher with 5.3%. Tell us why you do or do not support a progressive income tax that would distribute the tax burden more fairly and provide needed tax dollars.
Well, first of all, the Quincy League of Women Voters had a questionnaire that they asked me to fill out, and they asked me if I would be supportive of the graduated income tax. My response was this: I would be supportive of putting it on the ballot and let the voters decide whether that's something that they want. I can think of no better way of finding out what the public wants than putting it up for a referendum or putting it up for a vote, and so I've supported that proposal to put it on the ballot. Let me just say in the few seconds that I have left, my opponent on the pension situation said the last 10 years has been catastrophic. I want you to know, and I want the public to know, that the last 10 years, the state of Illinois has put $30 billion towards the pensions in the state of Illinois. $30 billion in the last year put into the 5 retirement systems. The 10 years prior to that, $8 billion was put in. The 10 years prior to that, even less. So we have, because of the decades of underfunding, we have started to address that problem.
Actually, it was the taxpayer that put the money in. It wasn't the state of Illinois. They get all their money from the taxpayer. The graduated income tax, I think, is where this started, and I'm not in favor of the graduated income tax. And the whole basis of the fact that Illinois is one of 5 or 6 that has a flat rate and that we're not even near to the top. I don't believe it's a race to the top to see how much we can tax our citizens. I don't believe in the large S and the extra growth of government. I don't think that government is the answer to and the end all to all of our problems from cradle to grave. I think we need self-responsibility, and I am for a smaller, more efficient working government. Therefore, I'm not for these tax increases. I don't believe we need tax increases. We need more job growth. And tax increases takes away businesses' competitive advantage in our market. And I am not for doing that. I am for creating jobs through business and letting them flourish. So I'm against the graduated income tax.
I'm going to kind of combine pension and education here. The per pupil funding level is supposed to be about $6,100. The last few sessions has not come close to funding that full. I think it's 89%, about $5,700 in the last session, and we've seen what that's done to local school districts. You say you're not, both of you will not, you're opposed to a shift of school districts to pay teacher pensions. If there's a proposal on the table to get the pension crisis solved, it includes that proposal, but it also includes a guarantee that per pupil general state aid funding is funded in full to school districts and all payments are made on time. Could you consider a compromise that includes a shift to school districts?
Does that shift to school districts also include the fact that they would not have to raise property taxes in order to pay for it? And if it does not, then I would not be for that. I don't believe in just shifting the responsibility locally and not giving us any additional authority. Now, I understand in your question you're giving us additional authority. However, passing it back to the local authority And only having them have the possibility of raising taxes to generate that revenue is not a solution in my book, and is not one that I could support.
I did a series of meetings all over the district back in July and August. I had 30 to 40, maybe 50 school districts come in, and we talked about the pension cost shift issue. And they said it was something that they could not absorb. There's no way they could absorb that additional cost. Now, with that being said, there is a great deal, there's a lot of difference in school districts around the state of Illinois. We have rural districts that have a very low EAV, and they have a difficult time with funding issues. There's other school districts, especially up in the suburbs, that are wealthy districts that have a huge property tax base, and they could easily absorb some of this additional pension cost. So what I'm saying, Matt, is that we need to take all of the, it's a complex issue, we need to take into consideration all the different aspects of a district, whether they, what's their transportation funding doing, what is their, how much are they getting from the state in resources, how much are they relying on property taxes. So if we can take all those into consideration, I think it's something that we could look at. Now, it's important to realize that if we pay our bills on time and we get the money that they need on time, that would certainly be a factor as well.
3% up to 5%. And that's supposed to roll back. I think everybody wants it to, but is it possible for the state to keep up with its payments, whether to pension or whatever, if that happens? How do you make up the money that will be lost if it does roll back to 3%?
Well, it's not going to be an easy task, Doug. And first of all, I want everybody to know, regardless of what my opponent said, I did not support the income tax that passed last year, Governor Quinn's income tax. I did not support it, and I do support letting it expire. Are we going to have to make some tough decisions? Yes, we are. This year, we came together in a bipartisan way and passed the budget. We determined what our revenue number was. We paid our debt obligations off the top. We set aside $1 billion to apply towards the backlog of unpaid bills. And then we took the remaining money and we allocated based on the priorities of the General Assembly. The big thing that we're going to have to do long term with regard to the budget, we've already talked about it several times this evening, and that is we have to control the cost of our pension liability. The annual payments that go into the pension system this year was $5 billion. Next year it goes to $6 billion, and it goes up each year after that. We have to level those costs off, and that is going to allow us to wean ourselves off of the income tax that was passed last year.
Okay, I believe this started with whether or not we should allow the tax increase, the 67% tax increase, to sunset. And I firmly believe that we do, and that I believe that takes effect starting in 2015. And I believe by allowing it to sunset, we again gain that business advantage, a market advantage in the state of Illinois that allows businesses to grow and expand. I was against the tax increase from the beginning. And I've never said that my opponent voted for that particular tax increase. He voted for the 67% tax increase under House Bill 174. Matter of fact, I brought a copy and have the roll call vote that shows that, yes, indeed, you did vote for it. And that was the more expansive tax yet. That was a tax that would have raised $7 billion because it had so many service taxes connected to it to hurt individual businesses throughout the state. I am not in favor of raising rates of taxes. I'll get back, and I may be very redundant here tonight, but I want a competitive advantage for business. I want to raise the bar and the revenue for the state of Illinois by having more people working and paying into the system, not people paying more percentage.
At this time, we will move to our audience questions, and the candidates again will have 1 minute to answer these questions, and we will get through as many of them as we can until time is up. To pass legislation, it takes a lot of votes from across the state. How do you plan to work with legislators from across the aisle?
Well, I guess it's me to start. I look at my introduction. I'm the youngest of 9 kids. From the very beginning of my life, I've had to work with people and get along. We have 6 boys and 3 girls in a 2-story house that had 1 bathroom. You have to be able to reach across the aisle. Now, I worked in business for 20 years. I had my own business. And when you own your own business, the buck stops with you. You're the end all. You're the final answer. But I realized that when I came in contact with staff members of mine that maybe didn't see things directly the way I did, I found it easier to work with them than work against them. That's my nature. Listen, when we go to Springfield, Illinois, we're going to find people that have the same interests as what we do here in the 47th District. They want the best for their kids. They want the best education. They want the best jobs. We sometimes just have a different theory on how to get there. We need to determine what we have in common and work with what we have in common, and I can do that.
You know, this is one time that I can up my opponent because I'm one of 11 children. I have 6 brothers and 4 sisters, and we also only had one baptism. But I'll tell you what, I have built my career on reaching across the aisle and trying to find mutual areas that we can agree on in a bipartisan way. I feel like I'm the only state senator that has 2 representatives of the opposite party, and yet my 2 representatives, I work as well with them as senators and reps of the same party. I carry Senator Hammond's bills, or Representative Hammond's bills in the Senate and Representative Tracy's bills in the House. We work together, and you find out that partisan bickering and fighting does not work. My opponent, his whole campaign has been directed and aimed at partisan and accusing me of beholden to this group or that group. That's not what my record reflects. I've worked across the aisle. Nobody has the best issues out there. Nobody has the only good issues. We have to work together and work on issues that we can agree on.
How has your business experience informed you as an elected official?
Well, as most of you know, I graduated from Quincy College here in 1981. I spent about 5 or 6 years working in ag lending, working with people every single day. After that, I joined the family auction business, Sullivan Auctioneers, and I did that for 15 or 16 years. That's running a business. That's employing people. That's working with people and trying to make their lives better. And that experience has certainly been, it crafted me and molded me into what I am. And taught me the business skills of trying to live within your means and spending what you have. And certainly that's what I've tried to do as an elected official as well.
Well, as I mentioned, I had 20 years in retail experience, and it was a wonderful experience for me and for my wife. We had good years and we had bad years. During the bad years, we knew when revenue wasn't there, our expenditures would have to reflect that as well. That's something that seems to be lost when we get to Sangamon County and Springfield, Illinois. Spending continues when revenue goes down, and that cannot happen. Every time we take in 2 and we spend 3, we put more of a burden on our next generation. And if I may have one more follow-up about the working across the aisle. My opponent says how he works with our representatives, Representative Tracy and Representative Hammond. Both have endorsed my campaign, for state senate. Both have backed me up with their dollars because both know that the problem in Springfield does not belong in my hands, it belongs in the hands of my opponent.
Would you support the Equal Rights Amendment in the state if it comes up again? If not, why not?
You're talking to a father of 3 daughters. Who I love and adore immensely. I have 2 college-age daughters and one who is, thank the Lord, gainfully employed. And I want everything for my daughters that is possible. I tell them, get a good education and work hard, and things can be good for you. Yes, I'm for up and down the line, equalization of pay. If my daughter is putting in the day's work and performing, I believe she ought to be paid equal with her constituents that happen to be a male.
Yes.
House Bill 6204, this is a comprehensive solution to pension reform. What is your position on this bill?
Oh, I may need more information on the bill. 6402.
6204.
6204, which, I'm not sure which bill that is. I
This
need
is
a
a
little more
comprehensive
information.
solution to pension reform. What is your position on this bill?
I am not familiar with the bill, so I'm not going to be able to answer that question. There's been a host of bills that have been introduced in Springfield dealing with pension reform. I've made it very clear where I stand on the pension reform proposal. 5 things have to be in there. It has to be bipartisan, has to be comprehensive. Everybody needs to be at the table. It has to be constitutional and it has to address the underfunding in all 5 retirement systems.
I'm not, again, familiar with specifically with that bill, but I would imagine it includes certain things that, like the state of Rhode Island did for their state when they found themselves below 50% funded pension. And that is they addressed the COLA issue, the cost of living allowance, and the compounding interest and the problem that that causes. They also addressed perhaps that a pensioner may have to pay in a higher contribution rate, and maybe we need to advance the retirement age. There needs to be something happen because with the current formula, the way we have it, we see what debt has accrued because of it. And I believe that we had working 20 years in business, I found that if I entered into a contract, the best way for that contract to work out is if all parties kept their end of the bargain. And I want to keep our end of the bargain to the state of Illinois with those people who paid into pension all their life. And so I want to ensure them their pension in their retirement. However, we need to make some adjustments for new hires coming into the market.
Are you for or against term limits and for or against a freeze of all lawmakers' pay until the budget is balanced without borrowing?
Yes, I am for term limits. I supported an initiative by Senator Darren LaHood who made a piece of legislation that called for term limits to be 10 years. 10 years in the House, 10 years in the Senate. The state of Missouri, 20 years ago, adopted term limits. And then we're asked 10 years later, okay, are you sure? Is this what you really wanted to do? And there was a margin of 75 to 25. Yes, they were in favor of term limits. I think if people were asking the state of Illinois, put it on the ballot, like the initiative Senator Zola mentioned earlier. Put that on the ballot and let people decide whether or not they think they should have the right to for term limits. And the other question was
Freeze pay.
Oh, freeze pay for legislators, most certainly. I'm a performance-based person. If you perform, I don't mind paying you for it. If you don't perform, you don't deserve the raises. So therefore, I think yes, we haven't seen the performance out of our state leaders. Therefore, they shouldn't be getting pay raises or benefit raises.
Well, first of all, we have term limits in the state of Illinois, and they're called elections. And every two years or 4 years, we put our names on the ballot, and we have to run for that office. And if we're doing a good job, the voters are going to elect us, and if we don't, they're going to put somebody else in there. So we have term limits in the state of Illinois. With regard to freezing pay, not only do we need to freeze pay, we need to do what we've done the last 4 years, and that's actually vote, as I have and all legislators have, to cut our pays. We've taken pay cuts the last 4 years that I've been in office. We've done that with our budget. So not only do we need to freeze pay, we also need to take reductions until we get our fiscal house in order. And I think it's ironic that my opponent says that he will freeze his pay when he's actually taken a pay increase every year that he's been the circuit clerk here in Adams County. So quite ironic to say one thing, but actions don't reflect what you are saying.
Agriculture is one of the biggest industries in Illinois. How do you plan on supporting it?
Well, as I said earlier, as the only farmer in the Illinois State Senate, I certainly have been an advocate and a spokesperson for agriculture, and I really relish that role. And I know when my colleagues come up to me that do not have agricultural backgrounds, and they ask my opinion on legislation, whether it's renewable fuels or livestock regulation or whatever it is, they respect my opinion on this. And certainly agriculture is our #1 industry in the state of Illinois, and I've worked very hard, first of all, to protect the tax exemptions for farmers so that they can continue to be profitable, even given difficult years like we've had this year with the drought.
As far as agriculture issues, I simply will not take a back seat to my opponent on this issue. I grew up on the farm, as I said, and I still own a stake in the family farm. I'm the one I have an agriculture degree. I was in 4-H, I was in FFA, I've served 10 years on our local Adams County Fair Board. I have been very involved in agriculture. I am very, very, very seated in knowing that we need to be very fair and very partial in favor of our agriculture community because they produce the food for our future. And just to readdress the issue on pay. My opponent started at $57,000, now makes over $82,000. I'm not sure how that's a cut in pay or where the cut in pays were throughout that process. And as far as me taking an increase in pay, I said I'm a results-oriented person. 6 out of my 7 years completed in the circuit clerk's office, we were under budget. This year, we will finish the 7th out of 8 years being under budget. I don't mind paying, even though the Adams County Circuit Clerk is on the, if you rank them in the state, we're 44th out of 100. So,
How will you help create more jobs in Western Illinois?
okay, at the risk of being redundant, here we go. I've been in business, I started a business, I founded the business, I grew the business, expanded it. I've made payroll. I know how this is done. And I want to invest in an area where I know I can get a return on investment. The state of Illinois is really a tough view for me to have a return on investment. We just saw the fertilizer company that decided they were not going to build in Illinois, but instead, just a few miles across the Mississippi River, are building a $1.4 billion plant. Hundreds of jobs, millions of dollars of tax revenue. We put a great package together for the state of Illinois, and so did Iowa. Illinois' package was better. We offered them more. But they said they couldn't trust Illinois to deliver on their promises because we are so far in debt and the leadership is corrupt. Therefore, they chose to go to Iowa. These are the kind of business opportunities we are losing in the state of Illinois, and it continues to compound the problem, and we continue to dig ourselves further into the hole.
Well, on that fertilizer plant, before I answer the question, is the state of Illinois did not put a package together. That was false information, so they did not put a package together. And the incentives that Iowa offered, $1.5 million per job created. Think about that, $1.5 million per job. What can we do? Well, we've been doing some good things here in Illinois. If you ask any economic development person or the city, any city, what the state can do to help, and that is the Enterprise Zone Act. For 30 years, the Enterprise Zone Act has created over 900,000 jobs in the state of Illinois. It expired next year. We came together in Springfield in a bipartisan way and passed legislation to extend it for 25 years to create 5 additional enterprise zones. We did that by working together. That is the greatest economic tool that we have. The other thing that we did in Illinois is we passed a capital bill, a 5-year capital bill that will retain and create 400,000 jobs. That's construction jobs, number one. But what they're doing is building infrastructure for economic development so that businesses can grow.
Do you have an active FOID card?
Yes, have had since. Well, folks, I was born, as I said, in a family of 11, one of 7 boys. Every one of us have been hunting and fishing and outdoorsmen and gun owners since we were probably in our I think I killed my first deer when I was 10 or 11 years old. I own guns now. I have shotguns, rifles, and pistols. I'm a FOID owner, I have a FOID card, and also very proud to support the Second Amendment rights and to get the endorsement of both the National and the State Rifle Association because of my actions in Springfield.
Yes, I do have a FOID card, and yes, I do have a concealed carry card from the state of Arizona. I am fully in favor of law-abiding citizens having the right to carry in the state of Illinois. We are the only state out of 50 that currently denies the right to law-abiding citizens to carry. And I think that needs to be changed. And I really don't know, I really don't feel like we have the possibility of getting concealed carry in the state of Illinois as long as we have John Cullerton as the President of the Senate, Mike Madigan as the Speaker of the House, and Pat Quinn as the Governor. Because Pat Quinn's going to veto any piece of legislation that comes through, and the 2 bodies of government will not support the concealed carry with a 60% majority to override the veto. So we need some change, and like was said earlier, we have term limits at the ballot box. Ballot box can determine whether or not we have concealed carry in next year.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now we will have closing statements from the candidates for state senator. And Mr. Freeze, you can begin this time.
Well, thank you very much. There's been a lot of comparisons made to me and my opponent over the course of this campaign. We're approximately the same age, we're both from big families, we have a farm background, education, a lot of similarities. However, I just like to point out the dissimilarities. Again, we look to my record as circuit court clerk. Having finished 7 years of budget, 6 years under budget, and now coming 7 out of 8. In the 10 years my opponent's been there, we've seen increased taxation, increased spending, and increased borrowing. That's not a record he wants to run on, so he creates a fictitious record for me. I believe in transparency in government. I believe that the light of day needs to shine on bills for at least 24 hours before they're voted on, so that taxpayers and the media can have access to the bills to inform the people, that they can contact the legislators to let them know, listen, this is how it's going to affect me, positively or negatively. I believe in controlling and freezing wages. I believe in term limits for state legislators. My opponent's been there 10 years and now asking for 14 and plus and more on. I want to go and serve and get the job done and will not serve more than 10 years, will not take a pension, will not take a pay increase, because I'm over there working for the people of the 47th District, and I'm over there working for my children. Now, I didn't coin the phrase, but I like this phrase very much. We need to be thinking more about the next generation than we do about the next election. And that's so true, and it's more true than ever here in the state of Illinois as we continue to accrue debt. Look at what we've talked about here tonight, folks. We talked about the underfunding of the pension and the tremendous amount of debt and the increase in taxation that may have to come along in order to get us out of this, all creating a worsened business environment. We cannot continue to have this. We need to have change, and change will come to the state of Illinois. It'll either come at the ballot box or it will be forced upon us when we crumble under this burden of tremendous debt.
Well, first of all, thanks to the League of Women Voters for allowing this forum to take place tonight. I tell you what, folks, I think you've seen that there is a stark contrast, a stark difference in these two campaigns and what we stand for. My opponent, his campaign has been driven on extreme partisan rhetoric. My campaign and my record in Springfield has been working together in a bipartisan way. That's the way you get results. I'm very proud of the fact that I have a broad base of support. Proud to have the endorsement of the NRA and the State Rifle Association, of teachers, groups and organizations, both retired and active. Right to Life, police and firefighters, Farm Bureau, and the list could go on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, you know me, you know my family, you know my reputation. I worked very hard to work hard for the constituents, to represent them in Springfield, to be a voice for them in Springfield, and I'll stand on my reputation based on that work. The only agenda that I represent is the agenda of Western Illinois. I'm not beholden to anybody. I've proven that time and time again that I'm an independent voice. I do what is best for the people that elected me. I ask for your vote on November the 6th. Thank you very much.